This week, we've got questions on Pope Benedict, Knights Templar, evangelizing indigenous tribes, and Charles explains why is religion such a dirty word today. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumbler House, here with an indigenous Charles Coulombe.
Indigenous? Like Elizabeth Warren? Pocahontas?
No, because she's not. And
They took the whole Cherokee Nation, put us on this reservation, took away our way of life, the tomahawk and the bow and knife. Cherokee people, Cherokee tribe, so proud to live, so proud to die. You seem somewhat unimpressed.
I am. So, what is that from?
Well, it's a song from the 60s.
From the 60s. They used to sing that?
Yeah, they used to sing that.
Why are you being weird?
Well, you're the one who called me indigenous. Okay?
I don't know. You seem a little jittery. You seem a little, I don't know. I'm missing something.
Running bear, love little white dove, with a love that wouldn't die. What?
Okay.
Yeah. She ran into the running water, but
Who sang these?
I don't know. It was an old country song. I'm coming close to the end of my collection of Boomer Indian songs, though. Oh, please, Mr. Custer, I don't want to go. The men of the 7th Cavalry rode off to fame and victory. Are you enjoying the richness of indigenous Boomer culture?
It's amusing. Yeah, it's.
It should move your heart, as it did a whole generation.
Oh.
I know one. What? I know one. Are you ready?
Ready.
Can you dig it?
Yeah.
All right, here it is. Listen, children, to a story that was written long ago about the people on a mountain and the valley down below. On the mountain lay a treasure buried deep beneath the stone, and the people of the valley swore they'd have it for their own. Go ahead and hate your neighbor. Go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven. You'll be justified in the end. There won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day, but on the bloody morning after, one tin soldier rides away. That's from Billy Jack.
Was that a TV show back in the day?
It was a movie about an American Indian community activist who was misunderstood.
What decade was that?
60s. 70s.
Okay, well...
I'm trying to share the richness of Boomer indigenous culture.
That definitely had some rich, vibrant lyrics.
See? There's a lot more, too, but I'm not going to sing them.
Yeah, okay.
It's a long song, actually. But I'm not going to sing the Ode to Billy Joe, either.
That's welcome. Okay.
All right, fine. Because you know why?
Why?
They say Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge.
that was last week, Charles, or 2 weeks ago, or whatever.
See, ladies and gentlemen, young people can't handle the richness of Boomer culture.
One person's richness is another person's crap. All right.
I guess that's one way to look at it.
Are you done? I mean, are we
You
going to
just-
move
you
on
just-
to this? I'm pretty, I don't know, I'm feeling pretty impatient right now with
You
this.
just took the heart of a whole generation, pulled it out of the body, and sacrificed it on the pyramid of love. How does it feel?
It feels pretty good, to be honest.
Let me tell you, all this garbage, all this stuff meant a lot to us.
Well, I know you guys feel things deeply,
Yes, we
rightly
do.
or wrongly.
It's true. Squirt, squirt. All right, that's enough falderall.
So what's new, Charles?
Well, several things are new. Some are old, some are borrowed, some are blue. Sorry.
Someone getting married?
Yes, someone's getting married. Actually, several people. But, in fact, it is my niece's forthcoming nuptials that will draw me back here for Christmas for the first time in 5 years.
Wow. You'll be home for Christmas. We can
Just
count on you.
Yes. Indeed you can. Just after snow and mistletoe and presents under the tree. You can see Christmas Eve's going to find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, whatever bad dreams it might give you. No, seriously, so that's interesting. Also, yesterday, as we mentioned in the pre-show, is World Anglo-Indian Day. I'm very excited about that. And the day before that was Lammas Day, St. Peter in Chains. And the night before Lammas Day, the night of July 31st, Lammas Eve. Halloween in summer, kind of like St. John's Eve.
Peter in Chains, that's not still a feast day.
If you read Dom Guéranger, it is.
Is Dom Guéranger the church?
Yes. No salvation outside Dom Guéranger. No, well, he may not be the church, but it's the way the church should be. How's that?
Fair enough.
I have to admit, it was John the 23rd who got rid of St. Peter in Chains. The way he got rid of a lot of second feasts of different saints because he thought they were too repetitive.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, that's something I've always, there's a lot I like about John the 23rd, actually. There's devotion to the precious blood, his insistence on Latin in the seminaries, which was, of course, immediately discarded as soon as he died. But I have to admit, the whole notion of getting rid of a ton of feasts because you thought they were repetitive. This is putting personal opinion ahead of the practice of the church.
Yeah.
Or to put this another way, I become the head of the church, say, and I don't like the fact that there are electric lights in a lot of churches.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with the faith?
Yeah. Well,
it's my personal taste. And wouldn't part of humbling myself be to give up, when it came to things like that, my personal taste?
Yeah, I think there's a flawed logic somewhere there that was used, because this is reminding me of, because I'm really big on taking advantage of indulgences, because I feel like I really need them.
Wow, you must be one of those people who've been born into original sin.
Yeah, so one of the birthday gifts I got a while ago was an Enchiridion of indulgences, and I think that was done in, I think, the 60s at some time. Who did that? Was that
Paul VI?
Oh, that was Paul VI.
And yeah, they got rid of a lot.
He slashed it, and so it's confusing, and they try to simplify it, and
well, what they did was they got rid of a lot of indulgent stuff.
Yeah,
and mind you, there were, under the old system, there were kind of misconceptions, like when a prayer said 38 days, people would think it meant 38 days in purgatory. It's not what it meant. What it meant was that it was 38 days of penance. It was the equivalent of 38 days of penance with sackcloth and ashes.
Yeah.
But, simply not explaining things properly does not make the things badly explained the problem.
Right.
Could it have been catechesis? Could it have been maybe the priests weren't doing their jobsies? It would have works.
Yes.
When you got a mouth, and you got a pulpit, and you got the two together, you could actually teach your people a thing or two.
Yeah.
Not just ask for money constantly. No, I'm sorry. Not that we're bitter.
Right.
At any rate, so, but anyway, that was Lammas Day, and it was the first harvest. The first grain to be harvested would be harvested on the 1st of August. And really, August is the last of the 3 summer months. And it's got some great feasts. The Transfiguration, I love. The Assumption. In the old calendar, the Immaculate Heart of Mary on the octave day of the Assumption. Now, Paul VI did something funny with that. He moved the Immaculate Heart of Mary from the 22nd to the Saturday before the Sacred Heart. And then he moved the Queenship of Mary that Pius XII had founded from May 31st to August 22nd, which is where it is on the new calendar. But either way, it kind of preserves the phantom octave of the Assumption, which Pius XII got rid of when he got rid of all of the octaves. Well, most of them. So it's, but again, it amazes me. They all knew something was wrong, but since it couldn't be the lack of faith on the part of the higher clergy, it must have been the liturgy. But what if the liturgy wasn't actually the problem? What if it was the lack of faith on the part of the higher clergy?
That sounds like dangerous thinking.
I'll be good, I promise. No, I mean, honestly, I quote Benedict XVI here from 2016. The problem, and it predates the council, is that now the vast majority, but in those days, the clerics who counted, that 10% of any organization that make it go, whether or not they have titles, they no longer believed in the church as the means of salvation or in the sacraments. And of course, the proof of the pudding was during COVID. Just make a perfect act of contrition and a spiritual communion. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Father. Don't need you anymore. Bye-bye, Pope. Bye-bye, bishops. Bye-bye. Don't need you. My question is that with that kind of theology, my question is not why did they close? Why did they bother reopening?
Right.
I mean, they told us you don't need me. So what do you say to them? Okay, if you say so, boss. I guess you are a useless parasite. Get somebody else to pay for you. Well, I seem to remember a very upset producer/interlocutor.
Gee.
Remember that?
I remember, Charles. It was my problem. I would think I would remember it. Yeah, nobody was offering confession. There was one. Basically, either you're getting it on the black market, and I had to do some shady things.
Hey kid, I gotta address you. You got a confession. What do you say?
It was like that. I mean, you're either doing that or somehow St. Michael's is very privileged to that they basically do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So they're still doing that.
My godson was doing a drive-through confessional down in Marietta.
I remember that. Because he was a consideration.
Yeah, well, it was ordinary.
Yeah.
And of course, the thing is when you knock on a rectory door, the little thing opens. And you go, Lefty sent me. But wasn't it a wonderful time? But see, with that kind of theology in their little heads, it's no wonder that the whole thing collapsed. But nevertheless, as you say, you couldn't point at you.
Yeah.
So it had to be it.
Right.
If only we could make the liturgy, which is not relevant to us, relevant to our people. Not completely missing out on the fact that it was as relevant to the people as relevant was going to be. The problem was their lack of faith and lack of belief. And it still is. If it weren't, I don't know that the last conclave would have gone the way it had. Fiducia supplicans.
What's your nickname for that one?
I don't have one.
Because usually you do that. I mean, trash can custodian.
Well, yeah, I know. Trash can custodians, dominatrix, dominati. But fiducia supplicans is so horrible. I mean, fiducia supplicans.
Yeah, you need to come up with a name that matches it.
Fiducia supplican. Oh man, love is everywhere, but generally not worth picking up.
Yeah.
Don't know what you. It's easy to pick up an STD these days. Let me tell you. What we called VD in my far off childhood. You know why they changed the name from VD to STD?
Why?
Couldn't spell VD.
They couldn't spell VD?
Well, they couldn't spell venereal anyway. They didn't know what it meant.
Oh, I see.
In case you're wondering, venereal is the adjective for venous, implying that one picks up certain diseases through the act of love. Whereas this made, sexually transmitted diseases, it's like with shell shock. Although the opposite. No, actually, I guess it's the same in a way. Shell shock was what people got in the First World War from being in combat too much.
Yeah.
World War II, that became combat fatigue.
Yeah.
And now it's post-traumatic stress disorder.
You don't like that?
No, I don't. I like shell shock.
I mean, shell shock, I think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
It does what?
Shell shock, I think of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's a cartoon.
That's not part of boomer culture.
Oh, okay. So millennial culture, we don't really care. I mean, it's just sort of.
No, I told you I love the millennials. A generation with my work ethic.
Shell shock. That doesn't seem like that's a health problem.
No, it was.
I mean, that's a health problem for like a turtle.
All right. How about combat fatigue then?
Combat fatigue. I mean, that's like you're tired. That's still.
But post-traumatic stress disorder.
PTSD.
Yeah. Also, I don't like the way it lumps together people who are, done in fighting in the battlefield, and someone who's been yelled at too often by his mother.
Well, that's definitely fair. Okay.
Yeah, man, I got shell shock from my mom.
Okay. Yeah. So you want shell shock.
I want shell shock. Well, I mean, I don't want it, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Man, I live for shell shock. God, that'd be a little too weird, I'm afraid. Man, if I don't get some shell shock today, why did I even get out of bed? I'm just being so confident. I got to give me some shell shock.
That I can see that. Okay.
That may be a future
drug.
No, a future adjective. A shell shock, Charles Coulombe.
That'd be a good one. Yeah. All right. Shall we get started?
Yeah, I guess so.
First off, shameless plug, become a patron for as low as $5 a month. Get your questions asked. Get access to the pre-show, which is generally 30 to 40 minutes. A lot of other benefits. Actually, yeah, lots of extra content on a weekly basis. Get special discounts on the Tumblr House bookstore. Get 20% off. Actually, and get 20% off our merchandise. Like
these added benefits?
These are all benefits.
Extra merch?
Well, 20% off merch. You know the Sacred Heart flag that we have, the Sacre Coeur and the Habsburg coat of arms, 20% off those.
Do you wrap those up around a rock and toss them in the window?
Well, that would be a stylish way to do that. I don't know if we've had that sort of, we're sort of more interested in
just getting it done.
Just getting it done rather than with style. But that's sort of branding right there,
I guess for a lot of money they could get that. They could order it.
Yeah.
But that would cost a lot, and no discounts on special liveries.
That's right. And sorry, void work prohibited.
Which is anywhere sane.
All right, questions. Ian says, "Hello, gentlemen. Been a long time since I asked a question, and before I ask this one, I want to thank you guys for continuing to provide us with all such edifying and entertaining Catholic content. My question for today is, what are your thoughts about the claim levied by some traditional Catholics that Pope Benedict XVI was a modernist? Do you think it is overblown and reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of his theology, or there's some merit to the claim due to the ways in which it was influenced by modern philosophy?"
Well, that's a very good question. Well, there are two, and I think actually, believe it or not, Ian, you've given kind of include your own answer in the sense that all of us are influenced by the times in which we live. I've been giving you some generations a healthy dose of boomer culture.
Yeah.
Now, as you might guess, in real life, a lot of that garbage I love tossing out at you. I don't like it all.
Yeah.
But it's part and parcel of the world in which I lived.
Yeah.
Well, similarly, modernism was certainly in the air when Benedict was around, when he was being formed. As he got older, he was very friendly with some definite modernists, but again, that's part of the milieu that he was part of. After 68, he gets steadily more orthodox minded. And I think that if you were to ask me, is he a modernist in a strict and formal sense? No. Was he affected by the milieu in which he operated? Yeah, sure. The way we all are. I mean, in a certain sense, I consider myself a monarchist and all that. But Robespierre, even though he was such a hateful piece of garbage, he was formed by the monarchy in a way I can't be.
Yeah, I think one of the things here is the disconnect in life experiences.
Precisely.
Right? Like a lot of the traditional Catholic community is, okay, you're very isolated.
Well, not only are you isolated, you also accept an awful lot, I mean, unconsciously, of the revolutionary ideas around it.
Yeah, yes.
You will not find, in reality, a more egalitarian bunch than trads.
Interesting.
Because you could make the argument, and I don't think you'd be wrong, that they didn't really have a choice because the hierarchy had gone cray-cray. Nevertheless, it is certainly the opposite of traditional to rebel against the hierarchy. Now, in this case, you can make the argument, well, the hierarchy were rebelling against tradition. That's their reason for existing, and they have no right to demand anything from anybody unless they go along with it. And that's fine. But nevertheless, the revolutionary impulse is still there. It's in the atmosphere we breathe. And of course, when you have a hierarchy that really aren't any good, it activates that pulse. But I guarantee you, we could get an incredibly saintly pope as pope. And there are a lot of rat-trads who would simply not care. Well, he's not what I want. He's not the perfect pope of my dreams. In a sense, we kind of sort of had that with Benedict.
I agree.
And we flushed that chance. Everyone wanted perfection out of it. Well, you're not going to get perfection. I'm waiting for a perfect king before I become a monarchist. Well, you do that. Meanwhile, enjoy your somewhat less than perfect President Kamala. Well, I'm sorry, that hasn't happened yet. Biden. So, I mean, we do partake of the air that we breathe, of the society we're part of. Now, I'm not saying this, to say, look, everybody's a hypocrite and aren't we all stupid? I don't mean it like that, because we're all here right now, you and me, him, them, all of them, because God decided it should be so. Otherwise, he would have put it somewhere else at some other time. So, I just think it's important when you're trying to evaluate a figure like Pope Benedict, do try to use the same sort of mercy you'd want used on you.
Yeah. I think most people don't actually pray the Our Father actually thinking about forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Well,
I think they're just like saying the words, but they're not actually.
Well, imagine what that would mean if we did.
I know, and that's why I say that.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I don't mind getting my trespasses forgiven, but his.
Yeah. So, but people are probably going to think this is pretty wishy-washy. So, I'm gonna get to the nuts and bolts a little bit. So first, when we say was Pope Benedict a modernist, what does that mean? Perhaps on a very specific thing. If saying, "Oh, this is a modernist take,"
well,
what does that mean?
Let's stop and think for a second. What is modernism? Modernism is the idea that there are no fixed truths in religion, no fixed dogmas, but that it evolves as mankind evolves.
Okay.
So there is not a set truth. That was why the anti-modernist oath required the priest to publicly declare his belief in this, 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 and this, his disbelief in this, this, this. That was the anti-modernist oath. Now, what happened in time after the 60s, when a lot of real modernists got to the helm, that really believed that. I mean, you look at Karl Rahner, you look at Shroud, you look at all these people, they were all modernists in the specific sense. They believed the truth evolves and can ultimately be the opposite of what we hold now.
Right.
But Pope Benedict certainly did not believe that.
Okay. Did he believe that the truth of any doctrine became something else?
No. What he did believe that expressions of it could change, but even there he didn't believe that it could change so much as to mean the opposite of what it had before.
Can you give him an example?
Well, yeah. The question of salvation. He was actually very interesting because he would not accept things like Karl Rahner's Anonymous Christian and so on,
right,
as a way out of what he considered to be a problem. Now, the fact that he considered it to be a problem shows a bit of modernism in him.
Yeah.
But here's the big but: he shut down all the available alternatives to it, all the while saying, this is a problem we have to keep thinking about. Because it was a problem, the very fact that it was a problem shows the milieu in which he came up. And one of the things he says in that 2016 interview is that, and this is a commonly repeated thing, in the Middle Ages, virtually everybody was Catholic or Christian of some sort, and so extractes salus didn't seem like a problem. But then there was the discovery of the New World and the Far East and this and that, and suddenly there were all these heathens running around.
Right.
And people were trying to reconcile God's mercy with this. But, he says, nevertheless, the great missionaries of the 16th and 17th centuries still believed this. Okay. We've got a few problems here. Firstly, in his mind, it was a problem created by the discovery of all of these non-Catholics. The problem, now obviously that was not a problem for the great missionaries.
Yeah.
Who just said, okay, well, let's go convert them.
Yeah.
But that was the same idea that the first apostles had. 70 against the world.
Mm.
And they didn't try to pretend that where they weren't needed.
That's such a good point.
They didn't say, oh my God, everybody's non-Christian. I guess Jesus just came to be nice.
Wow.
Well, I mean, this kind of leapt out at me, where he's going on like that.
Yeah.
And again, I've heard the argument very often, but the problem with it is that the apostles didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And neither did that first generation of great missionaries. It was only when they decided that, gee, I guess the faith isn't necessary for salvation. Well.
Mm.
And ultimately, not all at once, but ultimately, that led us down to the COVID close down.
Mm.
And it is the logical conclusion. Because the faith isn't necessary for everybody. It isn't necessary for anybody. Which is fine by me. No more priests, no more bishops, no more pope, and their little mouths can go as much as they like, and I won't have to pay any attention to them, if I believe what they say. Unfortunately, I'm stuck with the four creeds, with the fathers, the doctors, the scriptures, Christ himself. But if I could believe what so many of the hierarchy believe today, I could tell them all to go to hell. Wouldn't that be great?
All right.
It would be. You know, your elegance, I believe you. Go get a job now. Bye-bye. Go bye-bye.
Yeah.
And you know what his elegance would tell me?
What?
He'd call me a name. He'd say, I've got a right to this because God loves me. Or not.
All right. Question from Anglo-Albertan monarchist.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Let's unpack that. So he's some sort of an Englishman. That's the Anglo part.
Yeah.
From His Majesty's Province of Alberta in the Dominion of Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's a monarchist.
Yeah.
All right, we got that. What does he want? Why does he want?
He says, greetings from the Canadian province of Alberta. My question begins as follows. Imagine Charles is now sitting in his new apartment, about to have an afternoon nap, when suddenly the doorbell rings. Charles is mildly annoyed, but gets up, answers the door, and there, right in front of him, is the Austrian nuncio, who immediately informs Charles that he has gained a 2/3 majority plus one at the next conclave. Obviously, the votes have been counted a few dozen times, and although highly improbable, there is no doubt Charles has been elected as a new pope. The nuncio then asks Charles if he will immediately fly to Vatican City and accept what is clearly the will of God. Despite his great reluctance, Charles finds himself saying Accipio. Having become the successor to Pope Francis, what would Charles do as the next pope? Wow.
Demand a recount. No. Well, I suppose the first order of business would be to have a coronation.
Ooh.
And that would upset people. They'd be very upset since. Using Pope Francis's example, I would prepare to empty out those offices in the Holy See that I chose to. I would negate all of his legislation regarding the reformation of the Curia. I would similarly void trash can custodians dominatrix dominavi, fiducia supplicant. There are a lot of things like that I have to get rid of. I would, there's a lot of his legislation that would have to be undone straight away. I would require anyone who worked for the Holy See and any bishop to take the anti-modernist oath and to kiss their sweet job goodbye if they couldn't take it. And if that meant filling the Holy See with Nigerians and Indians, so be it. That would be, I think that would really get people upset and overwrought for a start. I would definitely have the circumstances of Benedict's resignation carefully re-examined in order to put to rest any rumors about Francis's not being pope, or to declare him an anti-pope, depending upon what a impartial thing was. I mean, this would be the voice of the church, after all, not my voice.
Right.
The ordinariates would become a particular interest of mine in order for the evangelization of the English-speaking world. And I would also, as Benedict had wanted to do, look into setting them up for Scandinavia and northern Germany. Um, I would tell the German bishops that if they didn't shut up, then I was going to renegotiate the Concordat with every German state and end the church tax. Now, mind you, that would be slitting my own throat, because the Germans are the biggest supporters of the Holy See financially. But that I would take the least Catholic state in Germany as the first one.
Right.
And then I'd move on as the population gets bigger. So I'd start with Mecklenburg, and I'd say, we want to avoid the church tax for the Catholics in Mecklenburg. Boom. Not that much of a loss. Okay. Niedersachsen. A little bit more of a loss. Berlin, Brandenburg, Hessen. And now I'll start in on the breadbasket. Nord Rhine-Westphalen, Rhineland-Pfalz, and now Baden-Württemberg, and finally Bayern, Bavaria. No more money for nobody. So sad for them. And it'd be cutting my own throat too.
Yeah.
But I think the nuclear option would be necessary, and of course it would show the people of Germany that the Holy Father was serious.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest. I think that's one of the most important things to show the outside world as Catholics is that, hey, we actually are taking this seriously, and people respect that.
And this way, and you know what, we can't be bought.
Yeah.
Oh, did I mention how I'd avoid the agreement with China? I'd avoid the agreement with China right away.
Of course,
be real quick.
Of course.
A whole lot of excommunications for a lot of Western European politicians and Americans and Latin Americans. Justin Trudeau, bell, book, and candle for little Justine.
Would you? Can the Pope get involved in things like with denying communion?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it can excommunicate people.
Okay. You know what I was reminded of in the middle of this question?
See, instead of requiring every parish to notify the Dicastery for Divine Worship as to whether or not they were going to be having a Latin Mass, I would be insisting on this governor being excommunicated.
Interesting.
If you're going to intervene in local affairs, rather than dealing with parishes' weekly bulletins, maybe a very prominently pro-abort Catholic governor needs to get it. Maybe that's a better intervention.
Interesting.
And I have to admit, anybody who'd been very quick, like Cardinal Gregory, to apply trash can custodians would find herself retired very quickly.
Yeah. No, but what I was going to say was this reminds me a little bit of the question of what would you do if you're the mayor of New York?
Yeah.
And so, and you talked about schmaltz a lot, and stylistically, because that's a different aspect, I feel like. Stylistically, what would you do?
Well, stylistically, I would restore a good deal of the pomp to the Holy See.
Right.
The black nobility, the chamberlains, and all that kind of stuff that Paul VI got rid of. Obviously, I don't have a lot of money because I just slit my throat over Germany.
Yeah, okay.
But I think you could probably find a lot of papal chamberlains willing to supply their own uniforms. And the thing is too that the temporal side of the papacy that has been so neglected over the past several decades, I would certainly cultivate. I'd bring back the sedia gestatoria, and the tiara would be worn on all the occasions it was worn.
Yeah.
The old papal liturgy, exhausting though it was, to the degree that we could afford it.
Yeah.
I would do all that sort of thing. I would certainly have the nuncios be much more proactive diplomatically than they have been.
Do the popes in terms of the Feast of Corpus Christi, do they do processions? Do they currently do that?
Yeah, I mean, since 1929, the popes do most of the things they used to do before 1870 in terms of external processions and all
Okay,
that.
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it? Is that so? Those are all the things, but the biggest one being slitting your throats. But at least you're slitting the German cardinals' throats too.
And they well, they would need to have their faces rubbed in their own blood. The fact that blood is green.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Adam says, "Greetings, gentlemen. May Charles talk about the Knights Templars' protection of the Shroud of Turin. How important was this in their suppression? Moreover, does Charles see any connection between the Templars' veneration of the Shroud of Turin and the false claim of continuity between Templars and Freemasons?"
That's a very good question. Well, I mean, they had, as I understand it, I could be wrong, they did have custody of it for a while, and eventually it came to the House of Savoy, by whom it was protected until 40 years ago. And then Umberto II, the last king of Italy, gave it to the church. But the Templar story is a very strange one. They were out in the east with the Hospitallers, the Teutonic Knights, and all the rest. Then, when the Holy Land fell, each of those orders had to reinvent themselves. They had to fight the same crusade, but in a different way. So the Hospitallers became the Order of Rhodes and fought the Muslims on the high seas. The Teutonic Knights went up to Prussia and fought the pagans. The Templars didn't really do much of anything except count their money and continue to act as loan sharks and so forth. And this aroused the envy of a number of European monarchs, including the French King Philip the Fair, who was hardly that. And he had already smacked around Boniface VIII, so he died. And the next Pope, Clement, moved to Avignon. That was the beginning of the Avignon papacy. And he, in turn, at the beck and call of the king, abolished the Templars. Now, they were accused of heresy, of sodomy, of all kinds of things. How true the charges? I don't know. What is true is that in Portugal and Aragon, the two kings thereof declared that the Templars in their particular countries were unaffected and untainted. So, the ones in Aragon became the Order of Montesa, and the ones in Portugal became the Order of Christ, both of which survive today. And they're really the only Templar descendants today. The groups that call themselves Templar, most of them were descended from a group founded during the Napoleonic Wars by this French doctor who, liked the idea, but he didn't really claim. Some of them do, but he didn't claim descent from the Templars. There's a Catholic religious order in Tuscany that's sort of a revived Templars, and they have a few in America and elsewhere. But they don't claim any continuity either. They just live by the Templar rule, and they're a recognized order of the church. Brings us to the Freemasons. Well, you can't trust Masonic history.
Okay.
They claim all sorts of things. They have a degree called Knights of Malta, as well as Knights Templar.
Okay.
So, I mean, they've always been very good for adding to themselves lineages that don't necessarily make sense. I think it was Ambrose Bierce who talked about how the Freemasons' history was always getting older and older.
Right.
And he ended up by saying that before long they'll be including the pre-creation forms of chaos. So you really can't take their Templar claims very seriously.
All right. Dylan says, how should uncontacted indigenous tribes, such as in Brazil, be evangelized?
Very carefully. Obviously, it would help if the would-be missionaries could somehow acquire a knowledge of their language and customs, etc. um, carefully. The missionary goes among these people. He learns the customs and so on, sees what they do that's reconcilable with the gospel and what isn't.
Hmm.
And what isn't should be preserved. What is reconcilable should be preserved. What isn't should be discarded. And they've got to have sufficient security that they don't get hit with a curare arrow or eaten.
Sure. All right. John says, why is religion such a dirty word today? Everyone likes to talk about their spiritual life, but not about having a religion. What gives?
What gives is that the rulership are evil and don't like religion. I'm spiritual, but not religious. Okay, what that means is that I feel linked to something greater than myself, but don't have any actual responsibilities to respond. In other words, in a religion of any kind, the deity or deities expect something in return from the devotee.
Yeah.
But if you're just spiritual,
yeah,
then you're not encumbered by commandments and requirements.
And guilt.
And guilt. And you can choose what you want from the big marketplace. You can worship fairies. You could be an angel yourself. You can do anything you want. Make it up as you go along. In other words, you get to flee from the horrors of objective reality and seek refuge in your own little head.
Watch the knee slaps, Charles. We've got complaints. We've got serious complaints from serious people. Actually, I don't even know.
That sounds like a title.
Serious complaints.
Serious complaints from serious people. You heard it here first.
Regarding the spiritual and religious thing, what's that line about the American people in terms of where like these two cultures, and was it like Indians?
Oh, yeah. I think it's very true. Frank something was a sociologist. I forget his last name now, but he made the observation. He said the Swedes are the least religious people in the world, and the Indians, as in India, are the most religious. And he says the United States are a nation of Indians ruled by Swedes. And a nation of rednecks and blacks and other ethnics ruled by Chardonnay swillers.
I thought that was so true. I mean, that felt dead on to me.
It does. I mean, you take anybody from your practicing Catholics to your evangelicals to your Mormons to your Hasidic Jews to your Muslims. These people all are actually believing in something. And they are taken together. They are the vast majority of the American populace. And riding on top of this big elephant are these little four-fleshers.
Four-fleshers?
Four-fleshers.
What is that?
You know what a four-flesher is?
No.
That's someone who doesn't pay his debts, doesn't keep his word.
Oh.
Little munchkins. Mental, moral munchkins.
Okay.
MMM. Mental, moral munchkins.
Yeah.
I belong to the MMM. Do you really? I wouldn't boast about that, sir.
All right, final.
I would have gone to the last MMM meeting, but the president stole my admission ticket.
Oh, okay. The final question is, who are the true heirs to the Roman Empire?
Harvey and Sidney and Sadie Goldenstein, who live in Boonton, New Jersey.
Ooh.
No?
No?
No? All right, never mind. I would say that's a very good question, number one. I think you would have to say, firstly, that there are a lot of imperial institutions still flowing around. We can name a few of them. The Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox churches, the great monastery on Mount Sinai, Mount Athos, the Vatican City State, Santa Maria dell'Anima, which was the Holy Roman Empire's seminary in Rome, the Principality of Liechtenstein, the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. I mean, if you see the different iterations of the empire as being from Constantine, especially down to Theodosius in particular, the Christian Empire, the Byzantine Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and then the two states claiming descent from those two, the Austrian Empire and the Russian Empire. But you've got all kinds of other heirs too. Look at your own country of Italia.
Yeah.
Well, the King of Sardinia, well, first the Duke of Savoy was given a title, which they retained as King of Sardinia and as Kings of Italy. And you know what it was?
What?
Perpetual Vicar of the Empire in Italy.
I like that one.
You like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in a real sense, whether you take the end of the Eastern Empire was 1453, the physical end, but Orthodoxy continued, and then the Russians claimed to be the successors through the marriage of the niece of the last Byzantine emperor to the then Grand Duke of Moscow through the Pope of Rome. People forget that part. You have the Holy Roman Emperors continuing down to 1806. We generally say that the empire ended with the abdication of Franz II, but just because you abdicate a throne doesn't mean the throne ceases to exist. So you could claim that the Austrian and Russian emperors were in a sense successors. But you can also, not just at the various surviving imperial institutions, but also the fact that baptism was entry not only into the church, but into Roman citizenship.
Right.
You could make the argument that the empire has never left. That we continue. We Romans. Now what we lack, of course, is an emperor. But there was no emperor in the West between 476 and 800. And again, between 1230 and 1272.
The emperor, what throne would he sit on? What throne would he sit on?
What throne would he sit on? That we have yet to see. We didn't know he was going to be a Frank. We didn't know he was going to be a Russian. We didn't know he was going to be an Austrian. We don't know what form it will take, but the imperial idea is perennial. It will outlast just about anything until the end of time. You might say the Habsburgs and the Romanovs today, if you wanted. But of course, there's a lot of argument amongst the Romanovs as to which of them is really the heir. And not being a Russian, it's not my place. All the kings of Europe, their kingdoms were built on the Roman Empire. And it was conceived as being the umbrella group for them all. I think of that wonderful line in That Hideous Strength, when Merlin is revived, and the Pendragon, Dr. Ransom, explains all the difficulties that the world is going through. And so Merlin says, well, can we go to the king? No, he has no power. Well, how about foreign kingdoms? They're either as bad as we are or worse. What about the church? Well, the churches are divided. And then he makes this wonderful speech that we must go to him whose office it is to uphold faltering kingdoms and put down whatever it is. We must appeal to the emperor. And then Ransom looks at him and says, there is no emperor. And Merlin sits back in his chair. No emperor. And as Lewis puts it, he contemplated a world he could not possibly have foreseen. But that doesn't mean there won't be an emperor again one day, just as there have been at the end of all the other interregni. What the empire will look like, what its shape will be, its institutions, who's to say? I don't know. But it is a perennial. And as long as the church survives, so too will the empire in some form. It's knee slapping.
Yeah.
Truly, the whole story of colonial Europe, the story of the United Nations and the EU, is a seeking after, consciously or otherwise, a restoration of the empire.
Mm.
And one day, somehow or other, it'll happen. But let's hope that the restored emperor isn't the last emperor of prophecy and folklore, because that'll mean the Antichrist is en route to the end of the world. And I'd rather we had a period, even though, I mean, I wouldn't be around to see it anyway, but it would be nice to have a peaceful period of several emperors, you know.
Yeah.
And then the Antichrist comes.
I mean, I don't know if I'd mind that so much. I mean, let those people deal with that problem. You know, when we enjoy the peace and prosperity.
Oh, I died 4 years before the last emperor took his throne. You know, it was a wonderful time. I don't know why I'm reminded of this, but did you ever see the movie version of Man for All Seasons, or the TV version rather?
No, I didn't.
Charlton Heston.
You talk about this all the time,
and I'm sure I've said this before, but I really, really love it. Thinking about age and all that.
Yeah.
The fellow who plays Thomas's steward and various messengers and all sorts of anonymous people, he's actually the Greek chorus. He speaks to the people.
Yeah.
So at the end, he talks about St. Thomas's execution. And then he goes on about how each of the characters that you've seen died. This one was executed, that one was killed, on and on and on. And then finally says, and me? Oh, I died in my bed, as I hope shall all of you. And he makes it sound like a curse.
Interesting.
Well, you can see why. You know?
Yeah.
The curse of the ordinary. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got a question for you.
Yes.
If it's Monday, what is it?
It's off the menu.
And the soul you save.
It may be your own.
Keep them cards and letters coming.